Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm so glad you're here for the last episode of season 11.
What?
We love doing it, but it's always time for a break. So we are looking forward to, of course, everybody knows we've got a big trip coming up, which we're going to talk about. Kyle, before we get into all things India, what's on your mind today?
Well, Sean, you may or may not remember at the beginning of the season, I talked a lot about my accessible van.
Oh, I remember.
Right now, as it stands, I'm waiting on a purchase order to be able to actually do it. So everything is buttoned up. It's just a matter of time before it actually happens. Pretty darn exciting. During this process, one of our friends from Australia reached out because he heard all of this discussion about the adaptive vehicle. He sent me this really nice, detailed email. One of the things he said is driving independently is a fantastic source of freedom. And I couldn't agree more. However, he emphasized that safety is paramount, especially with a progressive disease like FA, where, there is a point where maybe you shouldn't be driving. I mean, we all go through that with lots of different things in life. Maybe I shouldn't be walking anymore. Maybe I need a walker. All of that stuff. So he was saying every step in the journey is driven by how we see ourselves. We value the independence that driving gives us, but none of us wants to be a danger. Not to ourselves, not to others in the car with us, and not to anyone else we share the road with.
Yeah.
He detailed the process of going to an occupational therapist who's going to help you learn how to drive, taking into account your disability. And he said a driving occupational therapist doesn't want to get you off the road. They're not your nemesis. They're there to help you. They're specialists in techniques, tools, modifications, and equipment that'll keep you driving more safely for longer. So anyway, I just thought it was a really insightful and touching email from our friend Terry in Australia.
Yeah.
So thank you, Terry.
Terry, thanks for listening and for taking the time to reach out and communicate. Well, since we're talking about connections like that all over the world, we recently got some messages from Peter Tate from South Africa. And Kyle, I don't know if you know this, but South Africa is on my bucket list of places to visit. So I quickly responded to Peter and said, I want to visit. And of course, he graciously said, let me know when you're in town. So
yeah,
someday we'll get there.
Community starts when we share our story.
Rare is defined differently by everybody. In this segment, we're highlighting what rare is means to the storyteller.
Rare is kind of misbranded. Rare is under-researched and underfunded. Rare is ripe for new therapies.
Rare Is began as a social media campaign and has become a platform that is elevating the voices, faces, and experiences of the rare disease community.
Amgen's new program, Rare Is One, aims to share diverse perspectives from around the world of those impacted by rare disease. Hear from the storytellers who are navigating life with the rare disease, supporting a loved one, and advocating for change in the rare disease community, and the challenges they've encountered and overcome. Arno, who are you? What do you do? And what's your connection to rare?
That is one of the key questions of life, right? Who we are.
Right?
Good to be here. My name is Onno Faber. I am born in the Netherlands, moved to the United States 10 years ago. I've been a lifelong entrepreneur, mostly in the field of tech. Switched to biotech and research for mostly rare disease therapeutics. And that is due to the fact that I was diagnosed with a rare disease myself about 10 years ago. My disease is called NF2. It is a tumor predisposition condition. So I developed tumors in the brain and spinal cord. And most typically people with NF2, the first thing they notice is they become deaf because the tumors are on the hearing and vestibular nerves. So I started a video messaging company in Europe, and we moved it to the United States. And while we were doing that, I started losing the hearing on my left side. And that was really the first symptom I experienced.
So, Arno, some people are going to remember that we were all on stage together several years ago at a conference by Global Genes. That was, 5 years ago. What has transpired in the last 5 years? Can you talk about some of the work you have done?
Absolutely. That was, by the way, a very memorable thing for me to be on stage with you guys.
It was fun for us.
And Global Genes, they organize such an amazing event every year. Yeah, so it started with actually sequencing of my tumor. It was more of a personal project, and I was kind of trying to learn about kind of the basics, science, things that I didn't necessarily know before, because I was never in that situation. And yeah, we did like a hackathon with Google in San Francisco to look at my DNA data, and I was trying to identify potential targets for drugs and, were maybe already on the market and could be repurposed. Yeah, pretty soon after that, I felt I wanted to work on some more data infrastructure and make sure that we have better, more comprehensive data sets in the rare disease world. That's quite difficult because there are not a lot of patients, right? So I felt, well, maybe we can give patients the opportunity to contribute their data to research the medical records, and then the company would structure it, and we could work with researchers and academic institutions or companies that are working on treatments, so we can build a central data repository. So that was the starting point for All Stripes. At some point, I felt ready to work more on the kind of therapeutic discovery side. And I co-founded Rarebase, a drug discovery company working on like large sets of transcriptomics data, and basically trying to create a map to match rare genetic diseases. A lot of rare diseases are genetic, right? A lot of them are monogenic. And we wanted to map the transcriptome of the diseases to kind of the druggable universe. So all the drugs that we have, can we create like a map and a signature for both the diseases and the drugs and match them together? So that is well on its way, and a long journey. Of course, drug discovery is not something that's not an overnight project.
So what's your focus right now?
I've been refocusing myself fully on NF2 in my disease. I am at risk of losing my hearing pretty soon, my second ear. So I'm deaf on the left side already. And it's about kind of, can I save the right side? And I use that more as a guide than anything else. It's not about me. There is, of course, some hope that maybe someone finds something that can help, but that isn't necessarily like what gets me up every day. But I use my own situation as a guide for like, what might we want to do next? And I think asking the right questions to everyone involved, it's extremely helpful in that regard, to be involved as a patient, because you know better than anyone, right?
You said you're on hope to restore or keep your hearing. Isn't what gets you out of bed every day? Can you identify what does get you out of bed every day?
Yeah, I'm just kind of I'm a very curious person. Curiosity is really a big driving force. And what I'm curious about for NF2 and for my own tumor, is there something we can do right now? Like, and what is it? And what do we need to know?
We all know rare disease in general. We're pockets of population all over the world, but together, over 300 million. Like, it's a big number. So I'm curious, could you talk to what the community means to you?
That means a lot, honestly. Like over the years, I have met so many people from the community that are driving research and raising new funds, all based on their own experience and probably based on the observation that there is more that we can do.
What does rare is mean to you?
In a way, rare is kind of misbranded because it's very common. Like rare diseases are very common, as you said. Like, we all know the word rare and we know what it means, but to the people outside of the rare community, it might be not the best brand.
I haven't thought about it that way.
But it's hard to let go of our brand, right? Like, and what do we, and then what else do we call it?
Yeah, sure.
The other thing you mentioned rare is under-researched and underfunded. I think this is something we are all painfully aware of. It has a positive side too. It means there's a lot of opportunity in doing work. There are constantly new technologies coming into the hands of the researchers and the community in the world. New ways to look at the basic biology, new therapeutic modalities. So there's a lot we can do. Rare is ripe for new therapies.
And what gives you that belief or hope?
The fact that for most rare diseases, we don't have a lot of good therapies. It's all wide open. Anyone can come in. The technologies that we have available to us keep expanding as well. So I feel with the new emerging technologies and frankly also old and existing technologies, but new discovery technologies, there's so much opportunity. I'm really curious about what role AI can play in us making progress faster. I feel it's possible to increase our efficiency and the time we spend in research.
Well, as a fellow in the rare disease community, I get excited knowing that brains like yours are working on AI and working on different research and therapies and processes, because you're out of my league in terms of how smart you are. So I want to thank you for pursuing your curiosity and making a difference in our community.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Arnold. Rare Resilience is a segment of the Two Disabled Dudes podcast made in partnership with Amgen's Rare Is program. Visit www.rareiscommunity.com for more information and to share your rare disease story. Sean, we've had a few brief conversations on the podcast about this big epic bike ride that we're going to be doing in India, in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
Let's spend some time detailing it a little bit. Whenever I mention it to people, they always have a lot of questions, and I think both of us do too.
Sure.
I mean, there's some stuff that we're not going to know until we actually get there, and that's what's a little nerve-wracking, but also very exciting about it, right? So what is this trip? It's a 200-mile bike ride. The mileage is a little bit disputed, 200 to 250.
Somewhere in there.
And we're going to be starting at 11,000 feet, and we're going to go up to 19,000. It's in a super remote part of northern India. For example, we're working with a tour guide that is helping us plan all of our overnight stays and food and all that stuff. So I asked them over WhatsApp, I was like, are we going to have electricity every night? And they said, yeah, we will, but it might be limited. So we're going to bring a generator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, that's how remote this place is.
Wow.
I think there are a lot of things where we're just going to have to figure it out. I think a lot of it, we're going to think through on the front end before we get there, but there's going to be some unforeseen complications for sure, right?
Yeah. I'm still stuck on what you said about the mileage being disputed, right? 50 miles is a huge margin of error. Like, if it were give or take 5 miles, maybe, but 50 miles, that's a big gap.
If you look at the route map, you will see that it's about 50 to 60 miles a day. And then on the days that we're climbing, it's a lot less mileage.
Okay.
So it's actually detailed out, and the peak, the top of the mountain, is a little over 200 miles. And then we're going to come down, I don't know, 10 miles or so. So
as far as we can coast, I hope. Like, when we have to start pedaling, that's when I'm ready to pull over and pack it up. The other thing I want to bring up, and I imagine you've noticed, but I've seen, whether searching on Google or whatever, there are some photos that showcase Umling the height of elevation at 19,300.
Right.
But there are others that showcase it at 19,025. And again, 300 feet, that's a big margin of error as well. So which one do you think is more accurate?
Either way,
it's hot.
It's the highest paved road in the world.
And it appears to be the same sign in some of the pictures. So I wonder if maybe it's been updated. Like maybe the first calculation was off. But it's that same yellow sign that I've seen a couple different ways. But obviously, I don't care. It's not like it's 300 feet is going to keep me from doing this.
If it was like 18,985, if the other one was over 19,000, that would be an issue. But they're both over 19,000, so that's what we're going with.
Speaking of people having lots of questions, I was talking to somebody in the gym the other night. We don't know each other personally, be outside of the gym. But he asked what was new or, what I was doing over the weekend. And I explained training, riding, etc. And I talked about the mask because I know he's seen me wear the mask. So I felt the need to explain why I even wear this Bane-like mask in the gym. So I told him, next month, I'm taking off doing this big ride. And he was kind of a Debbie Downer. I was a little disappointed because as I explained that India, Himalayas, the elevation, he was immediately like, are you sure that's what you want to do? It's not safe for any American to go to any other country. And it was this immediate extreme of, I don't know, unsafety or I don't know what the word, unsafeness. It just an issue of safety. And I was like, well, I'm going to be with the group. Oh, that doesn't matter. I'm like, well, we're working with local tour guides. Oh, yeah, but even they can take advantage of you. And I'm like, all right, no matter what I said, he was very much a Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to talk to him anymore because in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, I appreciate the concern. I do think some of it is valid, right? You do want to be mindful of your surroundings and how you interact with people. But I was like, okay, I'm doing this because of a rare disease, and that is more threatening than humanity. So no matter what you say, you can't talk me out of this. It was really bizarre.
What's the purpose of him saying that? Is he trying to convince you to not go?
I wouldn't. I mean, again, we're not friends. Like outside of the gym,
Right.
I don't know the guy. He doesn't know me. You know, if it's one thing, you know, if that conversation is coming from your best friend or your mom or somebody who's really concerned about you, but I don't know. I just found it interesting.
Every once in a while, I have the thought, and it's very fleeting, but is this going to be dangerous? I don't know. I've met with this tour group that we're working with, and they're really nice, and they don't seem to be concerned. They do these roads all the time, you know.
Well, of course they're nice. They're going to take advantage of us as soon as we get there.
That's right, yeah. But the one thing that got me that they said is, you know, I was like, we want to bring a GPS beacon. There's these little beacons that they'll send out a little signal every 10 minutes. And it'll post to a website so people can follow, but also, like, it's a safety thing, too.
Sure.
But there's no GPS service in the area. And what they said was, oh, yeah, no, there's no GPS, but don't worry, there's lots of military bases, so we'll be safe. I'm like, all right, that doesn't make me feel safe. Sean, let's talk real concerns that we have that aren't just fleeting.
Okay, you're right.
One of the big ones for me is altitude. And that's an obvious one. 11,000 feet. We're going to be over 11,000 for 8 days, including going all the way up to 19. You know, I've been to 14,000. I think you have too. But I was at 14,000 for like 20 minutes, right?
Sure.
And then came back down to 6 or whatever. And so I know I'll be okay. I didn't get sick at 14, but I don't know what's going to happen over an extended period of time.
Yeah, elevation is a concern of mine too. Even with the mask that you and I have been wearing, it's not the same. But I'm glad that you talked about having been at 14,000. I remember when we rode White Mountain, we didn't make it to the peak, which was, you know, just over 14,000, but we certainly made it to 13.
I bet we were at 13.5, but anyway.
I think it was something super close. It was just a matter of time and terrain that kept us from that last little bit. And we were on dirt roads, lots of gravel, lots of large rocks to work around. And I don't remember struggling with breathing. So that's reassuring because when I put the mask on at the gym, my recent settings have been simulating 8,000 feet. And bro, I can't breathe. So I don't know if there's something wrong with the way I'm doing the mask, or the more I think about it, the more I think because it's right on your face, I do think that has a greater impact. Like, that causes a form of claustrophobia for me. Whereas if it's just thinner air and I don't have something covering my face, I feel like that's going to be a little bit easier. I don't know. It's still great for the lungs, and I'm still doing it and glad I'm doing it. Part of the hope is that my body and my brain doesn't go into shock when we get to 11,000 feet, you know? It's not a surprise for my body.
I remember riding up Mount Evans. We were at, 12, 13,000 feet. Ultimately, we got to 14, but I remember just taking a drink of water. If you think about it, you have to hold your breath in order to get water down, right? When you're cycling, you're constantly exerting energy. And then to take a breath, I had to like hyperventilate myself and then hold my breath for a second, take a sip, and hope that it didn't like interrupt the whole process. Yeah. So I do recall like impact on breathing.
Sure.
But it wasn't super acute until I had to take a drink.
Yeah. So. I would imagine it's going to be that even doing anything other than pedaling. Like if you go to,
right.
I struggle with that even at wherever I'm at now in Sacramento. We're probably like 400 feet or something silly.
Yeah.
But I struggle on the bike trail. Like I can't even pull out my phone and take a picture without there being some extra effort to manage or take a drink of water or open our protein bar. Like a lot of times I kind of have to stop pedaling and coast. So that part might be hard because most of our route is uphill. So I don't think we'll be coasting very much.
The one thing I think about when I'm thinking about all this stuff and stopping and doing all these different things, eating and drinking and everything we need to do, we're going to have all day to cover 50 or 60 miles. Yep. And so, we're not going to be racing down the road to outpace the sunset or something. So I think we'll have enough time to take our time.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, to add to your list of concerns, the elevation's a big one, but food is a big one too for me, especially.
That's my other big one.
I'm picky. I know you love vegetables. I don't. I will say I've had a handful of India dishes and I've loved them all, so I'm not super nervous, but I'm a little nervous that the food part might be a little challenging.
There is an aspect of there are stomach bugs and whatever else that could make us sick that we just don't have here. Like it's just a different set of bugs or whatever. So that makes me nervous because if you get sick, you can't ride a bike.
Yeah.
You can't, exert yourself all day. Yeah.
I don't think it made the film. But you remember our race across America. One of our teammates had to go to the bathroom in the middle of nowhere and was like behind a wall. And, I won't, for the sake of everybody, I won't describe in detail, but I'm sure we can all imagine, for guys at least, going number one, easy. There's probably not much of an issue. I'm worried about being on the bike in the middle of nowhere and having a stomach issue that means number one isn't enough. Like, I don't want to think about it. But speaking of, let's talk about what accommodations are going to look like those 5 or 6 nights we're in the Himalayas riding.
Yeah, we got some video and photos from the tour group that we're working with. They went out and did a whole route drive. They drove every single inch, and they went to the places we're going to stay, and they took some video and photos and stuff like that. And it's not very accessible. I know that's a surprise to everybody, but there's lots of stairs and dirt sidewalks, and a couple of the places, they're actual outhouses instead of bathrooms in the buildings, and
narrow doorways, all that stuff you might expect. So I do appreciate knowing that ahead of time and being able to see some of the accommodations that we're going to be interacting with or engaging with. Again, I will say that by itself doesn't cause me to think twice about this. I think, as is true in life for you, me, and many of our listeners, you just figure it out as you go, right? There's still going to be ways to make it work. I anticipate with those outhouses and detached facilities, I'm going to lean on several elbows amongst the team on a pretty regular basis. Like the other 6 or 5 riders hanging out with us, probably gonna go to the bathroom more than they want to.
Because they're helping one of us.
Yeah, or at least maybe not go to the bathroom, but at least go to the building.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That brings up a discussion of what assistive devices do we think we're going to have and what's our strategy going to be there? Because I imagine that, well, obviously a wheelchair doesn't work very well in dirt or up and down stairs. And so I actually don't know how useful a wheelchair is going to be except to sit like a chair.
That's my purpose and objective. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the show yet, but I'm traveling with my wheelchair, not my walker, for this trip.
Right.
And the reason for me is I'm when I think about pedaling all day, 6, 8, 10 hours, I know that my legs are going to be like noodles. So I'm bringing the chair really for a place to always be able to sit. And what little room I can move around with, whether it be outside or, in some of these accommodations, I honestly think it's going to be more manageable and ultimately safer for me because I'm not going to be pedaling all day and then trying to walk around all night or whatever it may be.
Even a wheelchair just in a room, like, I need to get to the other side of the room. That's helpful.
That's going to make traveling in the airport and stuff too a little bit easier, especially on the way home.
One of the other big ones, it's going to be weather. When we get to India, we're flying into New Delhi, which is, 300 feet above sea level or something like that. It's going to be extremely hot there.
And humid.
Yeah. People that I know that have been to India, they're like, you're going at the end of June? Like, don't even think about it. But it's really hard because we're also going to be going to 11,000 feet. And you can't go there in January. All right, maybe New Delhi is great in January, but not 11,000 feet in Ladakh. So it's kind of a little bit of a balance there. So we're just going to have to bear the heat when we get to New Delhi, I think.
Even in the mountains, it's going to be cold but sunny. And you never know. A storm might roll through. So we kind of have to pack for everything.
Totally. I was talking to a guy who rode motorcycles up in that region a few years ago, and there was a stream that they couldn't cross. So they waited till the morning, and it was frozen, so they were able to cross it.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
So, obviously, both extremes, warm and freezing cold.
That's insane.
I also saw a video recently where there was a tour guide that went up to Umlingla at 19,000 feet, and it was July, and he was getting like snow flurries and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. Buckle up. Well, Kyle, I think that a lot of people, especially outside of our circle of friends, wonder why we're doing it. Like, what's the purpose? I think a lot of folks that listen to us know what some of the ultimate purpose is to everything we do, but let's talk for a moment. Why we're doing this, why this was even a blip on the radar to do.
For me, I don't want to leave anything on the table in this life. I think it's something that you and I talked about quite a bit. We never know what the limits are until we get near the line. And I think this is going to be doable.
Yeah.
And we should do it. We're going to be able to be at the top of the highest paved road in the world. You know, that tugs at my heart to get there if we can do it. And also, there's another obvious one that it sends a message, hopefully, to the FA community. Makes me a little emotional, but we've talked about it before. Life is not over. Do something huge in this life. The top of the highest paved road in the world relates to FA research and whatever anyone else wants to do in their life. This is hopefully sending a message that, hey, if we can do this, then maybe you can do what you want to do in your life. And I hope that's the message that it sends.
Yep. I would expand that a little bit to say the rare disease community, the disabled community. There's so much more to life than your diagnosis or your disability. The diagnosis and the disability doesn't make things impossible. It really just makes things harder. Okay, then be cool and figure out the hard stuff. Like, there's ways to work around it. I hope that by us doing things like this, it encourages somebody else to figure out the hard stuff, whatever it may be, whether it is FA or some other condition or some other hardship in life. There's so much more. Come the end of life for me, I don't want a bunch of people sitting around at my funeral or whatever it may be, and they immediately start thinking about or talking about how, oh, poor guy had Friedreich's ataxia. I want the initial story to be, this guy, he rode his bike across country. He climbed some mountains. He did this, that, and the other. Oh, and by the way, he had this rare disease.
Yeah.
I want to be identified more by adventure and my perspective on living life beyond circumstances, as our tagline reads, more than he lived with this condition.
I think there's a draw to contribute to the community and just the overall forward movement of the community. You know, Sean, we had that segment this season called Newsworthy, and we highlighted a woman who ran multiple 100-mile races with 2 prosthetic legs. We highlighted a guy who broke his back and he's still a professional mountain bike rider. We highlighted a guy who has cerebral palsy and finished a marathon. I want to contribute to that. I'm really inspired to use that word and driven by those people. And I want to hopefully contribute to that for the whole community.
Kyle, I'm with you on that. I hope that somebody else, whether it be next year or 10 years from now, watch a video or hear this episode and think, wait a minute, I can do something like this. I can do that. I can, whatever. And maybe it's completely different. Maybe it is, riding a space shuttle to the moon and sticking a flag, a rare disease flag or a zebra on the moon. Like, you never know what the next generation might be inspired to do because they heard about a couple of guys that rode in India, or a lady who ran marathons with prosthetic legs, or somebody who still does some badass stuff with the broken back, or whatever it may be. So to be anywhere near that sort of context is exciting for me. And I'm glad that we're able to do stuff like that, and glad that we have a bunch of people that support us and allow us to do stuff like that.
Sean, speaking of all the people that support us, If anyone out there wants to support this effort, to donate to our effort, one of the things that we're doing is raising money for the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance. And specifically, one of the needs is to fund the Global Clinical Consortium, which I think is fitting because we're doing an international trip, right? And so if anyone wants to contribute to our effort for Team Farah, they can visit our website and we'll link our fundraising pages in the show notes. Thank you in advance for your donation. Speaking of thank you, Sean, every episode we want to give thank you notes because we understand the power of gratitude. So who do you have to thank today?
My thank you is going out to some random people today. I went out for a bike ride a few weeks ago and was on the trail. And the last thing I like is to have to turn around and go the way I came. So I was on a loop, and as I approached a big impasse where you have to get off the trail and cross the road, I realized there was some construction, and the sidewalk that I needed to be on was blocked. And it took me a minute. I didn't know what I was going to do or how to get around it. And right about that time, another cyclist passed by, and I think he saw, that guy's in trouble. He's not going to be able to get around that. And one of the utilities or construction workers kind of manning this blocked area, he and the cyclist worked together to basically pick me and my trike up off the curb or, from the street onto the sidewalk to allow me to get around this blocked area. And it really impressed with the way they both were like, let's figure it out. So my thank you goes to random cyclists and random utilities construction guy at this particular impasse.
The kindness of strangers is really amazing sometimes. I love it.
Absolutely. Who are you saying thank you to?
My thank you goes out to the support for Team Farah. It goes beyond just donations, which we're pushing for right now, and we love our donations. But also, when we were on Race Across America, we were riding for Team Farah as well. You'll remember that there were families that came out and met us at different points along the way. Yeah. And it was so powerful to connect with the purpose of what we're doing. It really drives everything. So my thank you goes to that purpose. The people that drive that and will get us up the mountain in the Himalayas.
Yep. There are so many ways to show support. It's not always tied to a dollar amount.
Right? It could be both.
Could be.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the Rare Resilient segment that we've had the last several episodes. We're grateful for the partnership with Amgen's Rare is One program. We want to encourage you to visit www.rareiscommunity.com to share your story. Be sure to check out our show notes for links to several of the things we've talked about today. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. And although this is the end of season 11, we encourage you to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. We look forward to chatting with you again next time. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.